Hi, everybody. This is Jimmy DeYoung with Prophecy Today video. This week, we're going to talk about the possibility of a second Jewish state. This is a program that you do not want to miss. But before we get to that information, let me remind you of our nationwide radio broadcast heard every Saturday on the East Coast from 1 until 2:30 and across the entire United States on a Prophecy Today radio affiliate station. This week, we talked with Colonel Bob McGinnis. Bob brought to our attention information about Iran, Afghanistan, and Iraq. Then we had our Middle East news update. Wiki Medad gave us the latest information about the breakup of the government in Lebanon and how Hezbollah is playing a key role in that breakup of the government. The Israeli Defense Force on high alert, watching what's happening there just north of their border. We also discussed the peace process and the fact that there is going to be a quartet meeting, the quartet being the United States, European Union, United Nations, and Russia. The reports are at this meeting, according to Rob Congdon, the Secretary General of the United States, Ban Ki-moon, along with Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, and the Chief of Foreign Policy for the European Union, Catherine Ashton. They will also be sending the Foreign Minister of Russia. This meeting to take place 1st of February in Munich, Germany. Rob, of course, gave us additional information about the European Union and the latest update there. Ken Timmerman had a conversation with me about his latest book, St. Peter's Bones. It is a must-read and exciting interview. You don't have to miss any of these conversations if you had to miss them on Saturday. They're on our website, prophecytoday.com. Go there, and then on the right-hand side, you'll see a location to double-click on Prophecy Today Radio Network, PTRN, and these interviews will be there posted on PTRN on our website, prophecytoday.com. But I do believe my conversation with Rabbi Yoel Karen is key to taking a few moments to take a look at the book right here on Prophecy Today. We talked about Hebron. Hebron is the oldest Jewish community in the history of the world, dating back some 4,000 years ago. Hebron is the location where Abraham came when he came into the Middle East with the purpose of following the dictates of God, who brought him out of Ur of the Chaldees, and was going to promise to give him a piece of real estate. It's a piece of real estate that indeed God has given to the Jewish people. They will live on it throughout eternity future. There's a little bit of a battle going on right now as to who has the rights to it. But Hebron, there's no question that Hebron was the location where Abraham came and established that first Jewish community. It was made a Levitical city. Levitical city meaning that indeed it was a city of refuge during the times when the temple was standing in Jerusalem. If indeed you had committed some type of a crime which was not punishable by death, but you could be punished by the family or the ruling body, you could make your way to the city of refuge and at least have your say in defense of what had taken place. Levitical cities are no more in existence, at least to this moment in time, because in our conversation, we talked about a move to establish Hebron as a Levitical city. You set up a small Sanhedrin, that is a ruling body, a court system of some type. It's not the main Sanhedrin that operates the temple in Jerusalem, but throughout all the communities in biblical times, there were smaller, as many as 2 or 3 member Sanhedrins, and it is a legal authority. Yoel Karen said that this could all be a precursor to a second Jewish state. Now, that's what he said when I asked him. I do believe we're on the verge of seeing that come about. But that's just conversation. That's just current events unfolding. What does the Bible say about all of this? I believe there is a passage in Scripture in Ezekiel chapter 37 that is key to this particular discussion. If you have a Bible, go quickly to Ezekiel chapter 37. Let me remind you about the first 14 verses in Ezekiel chapter 37. God takes the prophet Ezekiel to a valley of dry bones. He asked the prophet, "Can these bones live again?" And without waiting to get an answer from the prophet, God said, "Preach to the bones." So Ezekiel started to preach to the bones. He said, "Preach on," and he preached again. And then he said, "Preach to the wind." And actually what we're talking about, as he preached in verse 7 of chapter 37, he prophesied or preached unto the bones came together. In verse 8, the skin covered these bones. In verses 9 and 10, the breath of life, as he preached to the wind, went in and made these flesh-covered bones that had connected stand up like a mighty army. Well, that's apocalyptic literature, God using a symbol to communicate an absolute truth. And you interpret apocalyptic literature with additional Bible information. Verse 11 says, these bones are the whole house of Israel. What it's talking about is the regathering of the Jewish people after 2,000 years of a dispersion across the world, the restoration of a Jewish state, and ultimately the regeneration of these Jewish people. But in verses 15 to 23, it's talking about Ezekiel taking two sticks and putting them in his hand. And while these two sticks, one of the sticks had Israel on it, the other had Judah on it, and while these two sticks were in his hand, remember the two sticks became one. What's the prophecy talking about? Well, in 1 Kings chapter 11, after the reign of King Solomon, the 12 tribes divided. 10 went into the north, they were known as Israel. 2 stayed in the south, they were known as Judah. But those 12 nations, or 12 tribes of Israel, came back together. They came back when Ezra prophesied what would happen, and Cyrus, and he recorded what did happen, allowed all the Jews to go back. And in that list in chapter 2 of the book of Ezra, you see all 12 tribes represented as they go back in. On the day of Pentecost, there were Jews from every nation of the world. All the Jews were back in the land of Israel. But in order to understand this prophecy in Ezekiel 37, verses 15 to 23, you got to realize they're going to divide up again. There will be two Jewish states, Israel and Judah. These two states will be operating. They will operate until the end of the tribulation period, because verse 23 says these two states will come back together when Jesus Christ returns to the earth and forgives the iniquity of the Jewish people. Are we at that point in time? Could there possibly be a second Jewish state? This move to make Hebron a Levitical city is a part of the procedure to bring about a second Jewish state. But I've talked to those Jewish settlers. They believe, indeed, there must be a second Jewish state, one that honors the Lord, is biblical in its context, and does exactly what God tells the Jewish people to do even today. I would have to say, according to the prophecy of Ezekiel chapter 37, there will be a second Jewish state. I believe the conversation that I had with Joel Karen making the city of Hebron a Levitical city is a precursor to all of that happening. I have to tell you this, Bible prophecy is going to be fulfilled, and that's the best way to understand that particular prophecy. But first, before all of this happens, the rapture of the church will take place. We leave this place, go to be with Jesus in the heavenlies. Having said everything else as this study is concerned, nothing left for me to say. Let's keep looking up until...